tell me, Zax, there's this thing we talk about all the time is that diversity ceiling and seeing those challenges, felt those challenges. Tell me an instance or a few instances where you had to sit back and kind of make sure that you break through that diversity ceiling.
There are so many that come to mind. I think one of my first ones was my first role as a project manager, and being young and female and a different color, and having to ask for timelines, etc. We used waterfall in those days, and no one would take orders from me because you're too young and you don't know. And I left crying, and my manager said, "Walk back." Turn around and walk back in there and tell them this is the plan and this is how they're going to do it. And I did. And I think it took so much courage because I'm quite introverted, but to walk back in there and say, well, this is the plan. And if you don't like it, then, there's the door. Was one of the first, I think, instances that stood out for me. I think across my career, always being in the minority and in a room full of developers, in a room full of architects, in a room full where you're different, you look different, you are different, everything's different, right? Like even from a language perspective. And I think having to navigate those circumstances in ways right throughout, that's one of the ones that stood out for me. I think there's many things that come into play from a bias perspective. There's confirmation bias, there's affinity bias. You want to belong, you want to be part of a team and part of a culture, and but then there's also gender bias, right? Where you are very much in the minority. It used to bother me a lot at first, that I needed to conform, again, conformity bias. I needed to conform to be like them, to want to be like whoever else was from. It took me many years of wisdom and learning and having to go through, conversations like this, Women's Chapter program or different programs, to come to learn that, to embrace that diversity and to embrace being different, and now to walk in a room and to say, I'm so and so, or this is my role, or this is what I bring to the table, and to use your voice to be able to have faith in what, and know that what you believe in is right, and to use your voice. So it's those little things around, you're right, you're a female, you write neat, take the notes. Why should I have to take the notes? You make the coffee as a consultant. Why should I have to make the coffee? Just because our gender comes into play. And again, sometimes it's naivety. Sometimes it's ignorance and people not knowing until you have the courage. So you need to have the courage and say, no, I'm not going to. But saying no in a room where everyone else is more senior than you is quite intimidating and daunting, right? But you need to find that strength somewhere inside, that little voice, and use it and say, I'm going to say no now, because you want to say no, but you also don't want to be disrespectful and, all sorts of things. And you don't want to be seen as the weaker or as the meek person in the room. But you need to be able to, I think, voice and say, I'm not going to, or, that doesn't work for me. You can do it respectfully, but it's quite intimidating.
Right. And I mean, you're right. You hit the nail on the head where you said, because we don't want to ever be perceived as the difficult one, or we just being petty about it when we say no, when we say, but why is no one asking someone else in the room? Are they only asking me? And we tend to question ourselves. Are they only asking me because I'm the female in the room, or are they asking me for a different reason? And, sometimes, majority of the time, it is because you're the female in the room. So it's a difficult one. But I like that, is that we've got to sometimes push. And I think the older we get, we tend to get a little bit more confident, should I say? Because, when I met you, you told me this later on, you said you were introverted, and I never believed you. I was like, you, introvert?
I think it's confident. I think it's brave. I think you find that your tolerance also changes as you go along, and what you will and what you won't accept, right? Because it also then brings your self-worth and self-respect into play, professionally and personally. What will I tolerate? where's enough for me? And, that brings other things, again, like ignorance, bias, not knowing better. There was the instance where there was a bunch of developers outside my office and they were having a conversation and they were talking about these chicks, right? And I was like, livid. I was like, how can you say chicks? I'm standing right here. That's disrespectful. And I said, oh, I didn't know that was disrespectful. But again, to make people aware, and they would never say it ever again in my presence. What they do behind, is different. But they wouldn't do it in front of me, which is, I think it's okay to say, this is what I will tolerate. This is what I won't tolerate as a person, because I find it disrespectful to me. I find it disrespectful to the few women around me. How does it make them feel, the ones that can't use their voice, right? I think I've also had to learn to be extrovertedly introverted, or, find those spaces to show up. You have to show up in the boardroom. You have to use your voice. You have to show up, as your brand or whatever. And if you don't, you will disappear into a big hole and no one will look for you. It's I went to an event and this lady spoke about no one is coming, right? No one's coming. And you have to stand up for yourself and you have to show up for yourself. I know we speak about mentors and sponsors, and those are hugely valuable in any role that you're going to take or in any organization. But again, you also need to have your own courage, I think.
Absolutely. Well said, Zax. But with all of that and all that confidence and everything else, there must be a cost to that. There's always a cost, I think.
There's a huge cost, I think, from a personal, we spoke about personal trade-offs, but I think also from a professional perspective, because that then brings to light insecurities. It brings to light you're not technical enough. The imposter syndrome. Then it starts to make you question, do I know what I'm doing? Why am I even here? How did I get here? There's definitely professional cost to everything, I think. And that's why it's very hard to be brave and vulnerable in the boardroom, because you're not met at the same playing field as everyone else. You can come with no agenda. You don't know what and yes, we in good faith, we say everyone's here for the organization, but there are ways to maneuver and navigate those situations. It does come with the cost. Showing people up, calling people out. It really, really does not go down well with some people, which then leads to sometimes victimization. It can lead to bullying. It can lead to many things, right? And that's why people are afraid to speak up, because if I speak up, will I be victimized? Will I be, so there's definitely a cost, I think. And again, it's what's under the iceberg. What are those things you don't see from a success perspective? What are those difficult conversations that I need to have? Whether I need to leave early because someone's sick, whether, again, all of those things get questioned. And, we did this at the Alliance's chat, right? When you did your talk. And you thought, out of how many people took a step forward? Not many of the women. So again, it's very different when you start. The playing fields, it's not equal. So it definitely comes with a cost.
And when we walk away, nobody really sees, like you say, the bottom of the iceberg, what's behind closed doors, and the cost that you would pay for all of that. And you and I recently discussed what is the cost of success? Do we ever stop paying for it? And I still don't know the answers to that question, to be honest. I don't think we ever stop paying. It's great answer.
I don't think we ever stop paying. I think you have to decide from a mental health perspective and from a personal what you will tolerate perspective what's important, because burnout is real. Burnout is very real, especially at high level jobs. It comes with a huge stress and a huge level. So burnout is a real thing.